Welcome to Advisor Confidential, the podcast series that dives deep into the evolving world of registered investment advisors. Whether you're an established RIA, exploring the independent advisory space, or just curious about the future of fiduciary finance, this is your go-to source. We'll bring you expert insights, candid conversations, and real-world stories from the front lines of wealth management.
What is actual investing? We believe that it's our real-world task to deliver thoughtful capital deployment. It's not about speculating over the short term. It's about understanding the long-term opportunities for companies through technological progress or new business models. So we seek out those exploring big, new ideas that will change the world. Then we back them to give those ideas time to flourish. Bailey Gifford, Actual Investors. Find out more at baileygifford.com.
Welcome to our podcast series. I'm Jennifer Reed, senior writer, and I'm so pleased to introduce our guest today, Ron Bullis. Ron spent 8 years at Northwestern Mutual Investment Services before launching his own firm, Lifeworks Advisors, in 2017. Lifeworks, however, is not your typical RIA. It has some very special features for both its clients and its affiliated advisors, which Ron will get into in a moment. But let's start with some context. Ron, you are an advisor and an entrepreneur, but many people think of you as an entrepreneur first. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and how that informs how you're building your firm, Lifeworks?
Yeah, happy to, and thanks for having me on, Jenny. The reality is that I actually think of myself as an entrepreneur, not as a financial advisor. I became a financial advisor because of life's happenstances. I wasn't actually looking for it. It kind of found me, and I'm really glad I did. I think being a financial advisor is a noble profession, and I can't think of a business where we get to build wealth and income security for our families and those we love, while also helping people take care of their families and the people they love. So I think it's a wonderful, noble profession, but it's an interesting question kind of in an intro that you raised, and that for myself, after leaving a large national firm and starting my own firm, it took a few years of that before I really, truly just stepped into the role that I think is the right one for me, which is that of being an entrepreneur and building an enterprise. And that's not for every advisor, which we don't want it to be for every advisor. I love being a financial advisor, and I was a good advisor, but I believe I'm really, really good at building great advisors for our clients. And that's what I focus on right now.
What is it that you think got you there?
Life's unfortunate turn of events. So 2007, I was running a business in a different industry, and my second daughter passed away after 18 days of life. And being out of that business for a while, I learned some very hard lessons. Cash is king. Signing personal guarantees to buy commercial real estate isn't necessarily a bad idea, but it has real consequences. And so I had to lay off a lot of employees, tried to save my business. Then fall of 2007, the secondary commercial mortgage market, which is really where I played, essentially went lights out when Lehman Brothers went under. And that was the end of my business and end of my industry. So as I just, hit rock bottom financially, had to close my business, a lot of personal things happened that same year that my daughter passed away. I got a phone call from a recruiter at Northwestern Mutual that said, "Hey, I hear you're looking for a job." And I really wasn't. I was just, in survival mode. But it did get me thinking about the interactions I had had with the advisors. People can't see me, but I'm putting up air quotes. And none of them had actually advised me on how to do financial planning as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. And so what I did is I kind of had a Jerry Maguire-esque moment, which for all the younger advisors listening to this, they might not even know who I'm referencing there, movie reference. But I wrote a short business plan where I said, what if I actually just go and tell the story of how I was given advice by advisors who were good people, but it was advice that made them money, that sold products for their company, right? And didn't help me prepare from a financial planning perspective as an entrepreneur. So I shopped that business plan around to a bunch of different firms. And as you can imagine, it's now early 2008. The great financial crisis is underway. Door after door after door was slammed in my face, and Northwestern Mutual, hired me as an advisor. And while I had a very successful career there, giving away intellectual property to sell proprietary product, just wasn't what I saw myself doing for the rest of my life. I think they're a fantastic insurance company, but I believe that in order to serve my clients the way that I wanted to and build the practice that I believed I needed to in order to serve them, I had to do it from a position of independence, and the RIA route was the only one for me.
Well, let's maybe talk about serving clients for a moment. I think one of the biggest challenges facing many advisors today is that their clients want to pay the same amount of money, but get more services over time. As they grow and their assets grow, they think their advisors should be, growing with them, but not necessarily charging more. So efficient use of technology would seem to be a solution to that, but some recent studies have found that FinTech isn't necessarily making advisors that much more productive. Can you sort of go beyond the noise and get specific about how technology can elevate an advisor's game and let them serve more clients?
Yeah, and I think you might be hitting on something I learned early on at Lifeworks, which is technology can also be an equal hindrance to the development of the profession. So I'll start with a personal story here from Lifeworks. So launched Lifeworks in the middle of 2017. And one of our core business theses is that we believe the industry was ready for a different business model. So we built a subscription-based financial planning offering. Don't have to move assets to our firm, pay us a monthly fee. We'll provide you with planning covering 8 areas of wealth management. Had tremendous success with that. And by middle of 2018, kind of going into the end of 2018, we were drowning in our tech stack, right? So 200 different software demos, and we had put together what everybody in the industry at the time would have said, that's the best tech stack somebody could possibly have. And what ended up happening was the human capital that it took to manage 16 different pieces of software that were supposed to be talking together, but none of them perfectly talked together, created an over-reliance on the technology, right? And so I would actually say that same thing has been happening today. Wealth management and advice at its core is a deeply human business. Everybody that spends even an iota of time thinking about it realizes that the technology actually does the technical work better than a human. So the big conversation is AI right now. I just got back from Future Proof, lots of conversations about AI and replacing advisors. And as I was flying there, I had this thought. Would I be comfortable hopping on this plane right now if there wasn't a person in the cockpit? Right?
Great
and
thought.
deep down, I fly a lot, like almost 1 million miles in the last 5 years. And I know that pilots use autopilot and they use great technology for navigating. And I want that there. But I wouldn't get on that plane to fly 4 hours across the country if there wasn't still a human in the cockpit. Now, that might change over time. But when we get ready to make the biggest decisions of our life, we want to have a human there with us. So long kind of answer to your question, which I think is a very good one. Technology is not the answer for delivering more value to consumers. It might be the tool that helps us get better at what we're doing. But if we don't realize at our core that what we're actually doing, and I'm quoting Nick Murray here. So for anybody that's like, who's Ron to lecture us? Quoting Nick Murray. If you don't know who Nick Murray is, go buy his book, The Game of Numbers. Read it a dozen times until you absorb this truth. What we're actually doing as advisors is we're selling wisdom. Take all the technology in the world away, and that's what we're doing. So what's happening as robos and fintechs have done some really cool stuff, our industry tends to adapt very slowly, right? From compliance reasons and legacy platforms and a whole host of reasons. And so advisors are like, oh, if I only had this software, I'd be able to do fill in the blank. I had those thoughts when I started Lifeworks. And so I went out and got every piece of software at the time that you could possibly have to serve a client well. And I came to this realization that's not the technology that makes me a great advisor. Building too big of a tech stack or adding too much of the latest and greatest technology actually can blow up your client experience process. So if we start at the very center of like, what is it that we actually do? I believe we sell wisdom, right? And we work from what does our client actually need? My experience has been, and I've talked to thousands of advisors over the last 5 years, and I've seen inside some of the largest firms in our industry too, is that less is oftentimes more, right? What ends up happening is we add a piece of software because it's shiny and flashy and it serves one client. And we do that 100 times over 3, 4, 5 years. And we have this amalgamation of all these different pieces of software serving all these different disparate clients, and there's no unification, there's no systemization, there's none of the things that actually need to be there to scale, which is why we're radically different than a robo or a fintech. A fintech's doing like one thing really, really cleanly to one ICP, and it's scalable. So if you adopt that technology into an ecosystem that's not scalable, you're just, doesn't matter how great your technology is, if you have a bad process underlying it, you're just going to exacerbate the bad process with good technology. Long answer to your question, but I hope that sets the stage.
Maybe let's talk a little bit about how your firm is structured, and technology might be part of that. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that? I think Lifeworks has its own advisors, but doesn't it also sell its technology services to other advisors? And have you completely figured out your model yet?
I'll answer the last question first. No, we haven't completely figured out our model yet. I think that we've spent a lot of time interrogating our business model, our client deliverables. What is the actual product that Lifeworks is delivering? This is a secret, by the way, that it shouldn't be a secret, but every advisor should actually get really clear on the fact that they should start thinking about how to productize their services. In a world where everything is kind of unknown, like if you ask 100 different advisors what should be included in a financial plan, you're going to get 100 different answers. If you ask 100,000 clients what financial planning is, you're going to get 100,000 different answers, right? So no, we're not fully solved in what our model is, except to say on the growth engine side of the business, Lifeworks started building our own software at the end of 2019. We took on outside capital from Marty Bicknell, the CEO of Mariner Advisors, Steve Lockshin, the founder and CEO of Advice Period and Vanilla. And what they saw at the time was, man, Ron, you're building some cool technology, your subscription-based business offering, a lot of the things that you're doing appear to be solving the problems that advisors need in the future, right? And so we went from being a B2C focused RIA with a very distinctive business model to, hey, let's build a platform for independent advisors to join our firm and leverage our technology. So we never actually went out there and sold our technology. We just created an independent advisor offering, right, where they could use our technology, white label their business essentially and go out to market. Here's what I found. 3 years of doing that, so 21, 22, 23. Most of the advisors joined us because 1, they wanted better technology. 2, they wanted a better client experience. And 3, they wanted to know if they could grow like we had been growing using digital marketing. And the end result of that was that most of the independent advisors, and I mean no offense to any independent advisor out there, were so set in wanting their brand or their story or their pricing model that they wanted to tinker with the things that my team and I had built that seemed to be working. And I'm fine with tinkering because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm constantly innovating and tinkering, right? But the reality is that advisors who are really smart and growing fast recognize that it's better to be interdependent and have the right partners than it is to be independent and be a lone ranger. That's something I learned from my former coach, and I would even call him a mentor, Ray Scalafani with ClientWise, right? So where is Lifeworks at today? Well, we've pivoted back to investing heavily in organic client growth through digital marketing. And any advisor or firm leader listening to it, that is the most valuable problem you can solve, hard stop. You can have the worst technology in the world. You can have maybe even not the best pricing structure in the world, but if you get marketing right, if you get demand gen creation right, you actually are solving the most valuable problem, because it's not just that you're growing your firm or your practice, but people need us. Financial literacy isn't any better today than it was 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and 20 years ago. Regardless of FinTech, the world is still awash with 1, people who need help with retirement, and 2, the next generation of wealth creators that are trying to figure everything out while they're having kids and moving up in life. The complexity in our world isn't any better regardless of the technology. So I believe that when you solve organic client growth, and you do that by heavily investing, and that's a percentage of, say, revenue, not necessarily an absolute dollar, by committing a significant percentage of your revenue to learning how to grow, you're actually adding a tremendous amount of value to your community, your society, and your firm. So we have about 30 advisors at Lifeworks now. A good percentage of them, the majority of them, are actually partner advisors, which means they own equity in our firm. I have a software engineering team, so we do build some of our own technology, although we've even shifted what we're building as of late to really focus on new client onboarding and winning new clients. And then we have an in-house demand gen team. which is where our largest expenditure is. And we have some independents on our platform too that are running great practices and growing. But I do believe the future is finding the right partners, plugging into an organization where you can focus on the things that you do really, really well and that add value, i.e. bringing in new clients. And you can hand off the things that don't add value, compliance, trading, rebalancing, operations, like all those things every advisor should just try and hand off to somebody, and they should focus on client service and growth.
I mean, I think that probably obviously resonates with a lot of advisors. Digital marketing, is not necessarily what they went to school for and how they like to spend their time. So, giving that to you would obviously be a huge asset to them. How are you generating new leads for these advisors? Are you using Google or other platforms, or how does that actually work?
Yeah, great question. So how we're generating prospective clients for our advisors is paid advertising, paid funnels, digital funnels, predominantly using Meta's platform. And inside of Meta, it's predominantly Instagram. We also use Google paid ads, although that's a smaller percentage, different types of funnel. So I didn't go to school for marketing. I knew nothing about marketing. But if you want to build a business in our space that's going to be successful, if you want to build a successful 21st century practice as an individual advisor, you have to start thinking like a marketer, or you will get left behind. And so taking that premise, I've just read a bunch of books. I've listened to Alex Hermosi on repeat for hundreds of hours, right? And then I've hired some people that actually can do it. And I committed capital to it, and it's scary, right? I launched our first digital marketing campaigns in the summer of 2018, and we probably spent $75,000 or $100,000 at the time of my very small savings and hard-earned capital, and we utterly failed the first time out the gate. We put a lot of prospects into the system, but I didn't convert any of them, and I considered myself to be a hell of a salesperson. And the reality was that I didn't understand how to run a digital funnel and how to run a rigorous sales process that builds trust quickly. I had been taught old school, I'll say old school, not, again, just, I had kind of been taught the traditional way of asking for referrals, my red letter language, here's how Northwestern Mutual built this kind of sales guy. And the reality is none of that stuff works in a digital environment. Because the things that you would use to build trust, inviting somebody to coffee or breakfast, breaking bread with them, right? Getting referred from somebody they trust. When you run a digital campaign, you're starting at zero. They watch 30 seconds or a minute and 30 seconds or maybe 10 minutes of a video of you or engage with your website. And then they show up like, I don't trust this guy, but I'm interested. And to go from zero trust to enough trust that they hire you requires just a different way of thinking about your sales language, your sales playbook, your sales process.
Not to give away trade secrets or anything, but maybe can you dig down a little bit and say maybe one aspect of that that's different, that another advisor who was raised in a more traditional marketing world can say, oh, that is new and different, and I actually can't pretend I know anything about digital marketing because I obviously don't, because I didn't know that.
So I give away all my trade secrets. I'm going to make a shameless plug. If you go to thefutureofadvice.com, thefutureofadvice.com, I have a online training academy for financial advisors and firm leaders where I share every month and every quarter all the playbooks that we're running at Lifeworks. So our strategy, which is financial forecasting, pricing, how we're serving clients, how we're productizing our business development program, how we build our digital funnels, what we're saying, how we do the work, sales strategy. So here's something I would say. A great book to read as a primer is called Differentiate or Die by Jack Trout. It was written maybe 30 years ago. Okay? It's one of my favorite books. I've probably read it 24 times. Here's the premise. If you were to take 100 of your competitors, Mr. or Mrs. Advisor, if you were to take 100 of your competitors, line them up against the wall, and your best prospect, the person that you believe you could serve better than anybody else in the world, went down that list and asked each of them, why should I hire you and what makes you different? Now imagine that they did that 100 times and you were 101. What would you say to your best prospect? Highest conviction, what makes you different? Go. I ask advisors this. I did this very same exercise yesterday on a live training for a number of advisors in my academy. Put one guy on the spot because he was asking me, like, how do we train advisors in our team how to sell? And I said, well, I'm going to start with you. What's your highest conviction? What makes you different? Why should I hire you? We have 65 years of service. We have a great team. We're dedicated. And I'm like, who doesn't say that? And then what happens when the person comes along that's from an even bigger firm that's like, oh, 65 years, we have 665 years, right? That's not differentiating. How do you differentiate yourself in a marketplace where everybody says the same thing? Well, one, it starts with conviction. Do you really truly believe in what you do? Do you do it for yourself? Two, what is it that you really do? So people will then say like, oh, we give peace of mind and blah, blah, blah. Nobody pays for peace of mind, right? So we are in a people-centric business. There's 4 Ps to remember. You have to start with the problem. What's the biggest problem that somebody needs solved? Okay, so you have people, problem, and then you have to say, what is the product that actually solves it? Is it charging them 1% on AUM and sticking them in 15 ETFs that they can buy for free anywhere? Well, no, that's not how you solve the problem, but that's how you get paid. Oh, so we're in an industry right now that has a misalignment of how advisors get paid versus the value they add. Hint, what if you get rid of that and you charge a fee for planning? I've told advisors this now 1,000 times in 7 years. Charging a fee for financial planning shouldn't be a differentiator, but in an industry where 96 cents of every dollar of revenue is an assets under management fee, charging a fee for the work that you do that's valuable is a differentiator. And if you say, well, people won't pay it, wrong. I have 2,000 households to prove you otherwise. Facet has like 35,000, I don't even know, they might be way higher than that. I won't state the number, but I have thousands, tens of thousands of clients that would state otherwise. The best advisors in the industry that I have interviewed or that I have had the opportunity to meet have one thing in common. They charge for their time and their services. Now, some of them move to an AUM fee once the person's a client, but 2019, TD Ameritrade, they did their RIA benchmarking and surveys. They called it the TDFA Insights. Schwab now has kind of picked up on this. The 2019 one, I think, is instructive because it came out in 2020, and it said this, your fee structure shouldn't be a differentiating principle. But in a world where everybody charges the same thing and everybody offers the same services, getting clear on what you do and how you bill is a really great starting point. From there, you might build some other unique things on top of it. Hey, we do a values-based planning process. Well, then define it, name that product, and sell it. So this isn't rocket science. We're in a human business. Alex Hormozy's quote here is, find the most difficult problem that rich people have and solve it, and you'll have an amazing scalable business. So what's the problem? Write it down, state it, go interview 25 people that have the same problem, do some market research, right? That's how I would say, if you're wanting to get in and differentiate yourself, figure out the problem and then figure out a fee and then tell somebody, I charge X to solve this problem.
And I guess in this industry, that's rather unique in terms of how you approach advisors and clients.
It is.
I'm going to backtrack a little bit because you said you used the word scary at one point, and that was about your outlay of capital on technology. And I am sort of interested in hearing a little bit more about that. How do you determine whether the payback on that is there?
Great question. So first of all, every advisor should have a financial forecast for their business. I've also interviewed and asked this question now to a very large number of advisors over the years. Do you have a well thought out, clear strategy for your practice? And the answer is generally no. In fact, at Future Proof, I went to this event, awesome event. It was a CMO collective. At our table, right? So there's maybe 200 people that are marketing focused in the industry. There was a few people like me that are the owners that are kind of like, I'm just here to hear what you guys talk about, right? And we were talking about ROI and payback, right? And I said to the 9 other people sitting at my 10-person table, how many of you have 5-year forecasts where you know and you're tracking your KPIs, your LTV, your CAC, your ACV, and there was like blank stares. And there were some pretty good sized firms represented there, right? And I don't mean any offense to them. Our industry doesn't teach us this, right? You go into a high growth SaaS business or a wealth tech space, like this is normal. They know the lifetime value of their client. They know what it costs to acquire them, their CAC. They know how long their payback period is. So this is a kind of a divergence to the answering on technology. How do I do that? I have a 5-year financial forecast. I have a written strategic plan for my business. It's not overly complex. We try and keep it in a couple pages, right? Where should we be investing capital that has the maximum ROI? It's not in technology right now. In fact, we've been decreasing our tech spend now for the last 2 years, and we'll get to where we're probably in maintenance mode. We're spending all of our money on digital marketing and growth. But I know my LTV. I know how my value is calculated for Lifeworks. And any advisor listening can do this, right? This is take your current business plan, track it forward 3 years, say, how is my practice valued today? How will it be valued in 3 years? And here's something I learned from my previous coaches, and I ignored this for a few years when I started Lifeworks. They used to tell me, Ron, you need to have an exit strategy. And I used to say, I'm super young. I love what I'm doing. I want to be the CEO of Lifeworks when I'm 60, right? 20 years from now. What I realized is when you don't begin with the end in mind, Stephen Covey's quote, when you don't think about your business as building it to sell, you don't make wise decisions as the owner of it. Meaning you end up investing in technology that doesn't actually change the value of your practice. You end up hiring people that don't actually add value to your practice. Because if you start thinking about, I'm building a business to sell it in 3 years or 5 years, some finite time period, right? You're not actually forced to make the hard decisions. Now, you don't need to sell your practice in 3 years, but the secret here is if you run a strategic forecast and you get clear on what your value is today and what actually adds value, that will very quickly lead you to where you should be investing capital. Maybe for some it's technology. For us, we built a lot of technology, and now it's like, man, I almost wish I had all that back. I wish I was still using crayons and paper, to be perfectly honest, because if I would have spent the same $10 million on business development that we spent on technology over these last 7 years, like I just look at us and I'm like, right? So 5-year forecast, strategic plan, know your value today, know your starting point, just like you would do for a client, right? Same rationale. Why do we tell clients they should have a financial plan? Well, you don't have any idea how to navigate into the future if you don't know where you're starting from, right? Forecast growth out, be conservative, don't count market growth. We put 0 market growth into our forecasts. And then say, I'm about to spend 50 grand, 100 grand, whatever of my money. Is this going to change my practice valuation and over what timeline?
With that being your philosophy about how this model works for you, what is your take on the sort of larger FinTech landscape? Do you see a lot of firms that you think are doing things wrong? Are they doing things right? What do you think is going on in general, and who do you look to for inspiration and ideas?
So I think most of the industry is sleepwalking to their slow demise and death. The belief that we're going to be able to do the same thing in the future that was done in the past is just deadly. Blockbuster to Netflix, Uber to taxis, Instagram to Eastman Kodak. The financial advising industry, this 1% AUM industry that we live in, covers a lot of sins of really terribly run businesses. The data out there is really clear right now. I'm going to cover a couple of data points. So any advisor that wants to challenge this slow sleepwalking to your death thing, here you go. 70% of all the growth in the wealth management industry in the last 10 years came from market appreciation. Back that out, and even the biggest firms in our industry would have shrunk. From Schwab's 2022 RA benchmarking study, if I'm remembering the right year, I think it was 2022, the average firm responded in there, added 13 new clients that year. Okay, so here's a couple of data points. 70% of the growth has been market appreciation. The vast majority of capital being deployed in our industry right now is not to the benefit of consumers. It's financial engineering coming from PEs playing a roll-up game. Go look at other industries that have played this same game before us, folks. This is not new. Aggregation using PE money, okay, is not new. And it's going to happen. I'm not saying it shouldn't. I'm a free market guy. Like, let people invest where they want to go. But when one big firm buys another big firm, are they really saying they just added value to the client? Or are they saying I trade at 20 times EBITDA and you trade at 17 times EBITDA, and so there's accretive value to our shareholders? You can't serve two masters. So 70% market appreciation and growth, okay? 90% of assets, 80 to 90, we'll use 80. 80% of assets leave a firm at the death of the primary client. This has been known for years. There's plenty of studies out there on this. So riddle me this. 70% of assets are held by the baby boom generation. The oldest is 78 going on 79. The youngest is 65 this year. Average lifespan for a non-smoking American man, 78 years old. For a female, something like 81. You're buying a declining cash flow, declining value asset, expecting that it's going to continue to grow into perpetuity at the same rate it always has. This is stupidity. What is clear is that the wealth holder of tomorrow is not the wealth holder of today. It's also clear that the market cycle we've been in with monetary policy and growth and demographics that drove the growth of our equity market is not likely to be replicated over the next 30, 40, 50 years. And this isn't Ron saying this, like some of the brightest macroeconomics people out there. Rural Paul would be a good example, right? So, okay, so 70% of growth has been market appreciation, not organic growth, right? Check. Most of the biggest firms in our industry are not deploying capital and building their own tech, which is why we have FinTech. Right? It's why we have robo-advisors. It's why we have direct-to-consumer platforms. It's not being built by the biggest firms in our industry. Heck, some of them are still opening accounts using DocuSign and paper, right? Okay. 80 to 90% of assets will leave at the death of the primary client. What's the average age of a wealth management client? Who has the largest block of next-generation wealth holders as clients in the industry right now? You know? Robinhood. What did Robinhood do last year? That should have sent shockwaves through our industry, and most people are ignoring it and writing it off. They bought a custodian. They're building a bank and a trust department. They quietly announced this year that they're going to start testing an advisor referral program. They have 26, maybe now 30 million, something like this, next-gen wealth creators as clients. Everybody goes, who's going to get all the baby boomers' money? It's liquid. It's not static. Now, the thought, McDonald's, Coke, and big consumer brands have taught us this. Why did they start building and funding schools in the 80s, 70s, 80s, and 90s? It's because if you get somebody drinking Coca-Cola when they're young, they don't switch to Pepsi when they become an adult. I like to fly Delta. Why? American Airlines also flies out of my airport. I don't know. I just started flying Delta, and now I fly Delta. How much work would it take for American Airlines to get me to switch to American Airlines? A lot. My preferences are built. So the way I look at this right now is that it's not going to be the FinTech or robo-advisors that cause the pain points for the wealth management industry in the future. It's going to be the lack of actually looking in the mirror and going, hold on a minute, right? What we're doing today is not going to work tomorrow. I interviewed Rick Edelman a couple of years ago, and he said this. He said, most of the advice that most of the advisors give most of their clients is wrong. It's based on the past, not based on the future. And then I said, well, what's your outlook? And he said, Ron, there's never been a better opportunity for building a massively successful wealth management practice. Then he paused. And he said, if you're going to build a practice for the 21st century. And he paused again. And he said, and sadly, most firms aren't doing that. So FinTech, lots of great innovative stuff, hasn't made headway. So the wealth management companies, especially advisors, think, it's not going to impact me. Well, it hasn't made headway because the baby boomers control 50% of all the publicly traded equities, 70% of all the wealth in the United States, 70% of all the privately held companies, 70% of all the real estate. And their preferences were already built. They're perfectly fine paying 1% assets under management. That's the game they grew up with. The 40-year-old and younger person that's got a Coinbase account, a Robinhood account, maybe a Wealthfront account, and they're working with an advisor, like, they grew up in a different world. And to think that they're going to have the same preferences their parents and grandparents, I think is just, it's Blockbuster to Netflix.
So obviously, you're positioning Lifeworks to sort of ride that transition and to be successful. How do you see that success coming? And what do you see for your firm in the future?
It's a really great question. I think the future, what I tell my team is it's really easy to get caught up in your own belief system about what the future will look like. And so what we try and do is we try and focus on the things that aren't going to change, demographics, where money resides now and how that will move. What we're really intentionally trying to do at Lifeworks is say, what is the firm of the future? What does the future advice look like? Well, first and foremost, I think there is going to be a business model shift, right? Especially as AI moves into this space. The reality is anybody who's out there still selling their investment returns and creating alpha in the market, like all of those smart things, to the extent they do or don't exist now, and the longer form debate as to whether it actually create, like all of those things are going to be ubiquitous and available to anybody within seconds, especially at the rate with which intelligence on the AI spectrum keeps developing. So what does the world look like? Well, it means you have to have a business model that supports the value that I'm providing is actually me, the human, and I charge for that, right? So one, I think the business model has to shift. We're positioning ourselves there, but I don't know exactly what it's going to look like. I'm just open to being out there, like with a business model that some people think is bananas, to be perfectly honest. I have a lot of advisors like, I can't believe you want your clients seeing how much they pay you every month. Like, yeah, like I've had that said to me hundreds of times. Man, your guys are really bold. Like, I'd be nervous if my client saw how much I was making off them every month. And I'm like, yeah, because most advisors, quoting Steve Laction here, are grossly overpaid. So what are we doing? Well, one, we're trying to say, what does the next generation of wealth holder need from their advisor? What do they need? And instead of trying to be disruptive, we're just saying, let's go deliver that today. Peter Sheehan gave a keynote at a Barron's team summit that I was lucky enough to get invited to attend. And it was in 2019. And I can see him on stage. I can hear him today. And I have I took 2 pages of notes. He said this: if the rate of change outside of your team is faster than the rate of change inside of your team or your company, there's only one result. You're getting left behind. And then he shared a story about how he was had this interaction with a bunch of, CEOs of the largest companies that were interviewing on this panel, Jeff Bezos, right, the founder of Amazon. And one of the CEOs asked Jeff, like, how do you think about what industry to disrupt next as you're like looking out of the future of Amazon? And Peter shared the story of how Jeff just kind of looked at everybody like, you're bonkers. And Jeff's response was, I don't think about that. We just wake up every day and say, where is our consumer going and how do we beat them there? And I think that's what an advisor, regardless of how they're serving clients, whether they're in a wirehouse or a big national insurance company or an RIA, I think if every advisor wakes up every day saying, what is it that my best client actually needs from me? And what are they going to need from me tomorrow and 5 years from now? And how do I beat them there? The rest solves itself, in my opinion. So what we're doing at Lifeworks is we're challenging our team. What does our best client need today? How do we deliver that? How should we price that? And what do we think they're going to need in 10 years? What is the me, the 43-year-old upwardly mobile millennial that will be in that group of people that will inherit the baby boomers' wealth? What are they going to need in 10 years when they're 53?
What do you think you will need?
My time. The one thing that I don't get any more of that everybody wants. The world isn't getting less complex, it's getting more. As technologies evolve, there's technology that does things for us, but I would ask you, like, is your calendar any less full? Do you feel any less busy on a day-to-day basis? Do you feel like you have any less choices? The one thing that tech generally follows with technological advancement is choice and freedom. So if we live in this world of the AI maximalist theory, right, like jump forward into the future where we've got Optimus robots and stuff mowing our lawns, what do you actually think humans are going to do? Do you think we're going to become stoics and philosophers and sit around opining about things all day? Or do you think we're going to find things still to fill our time? Or is it more likely that we're just going to be bombarded with an infinite number of more choices? So what I believe at my core, and I don't have a full solution to this yet, so this isn't me speaking as if I've solved this, is that what I'm going to want is my time back. I don't want to actually figure out which one of these AI investing engines or I don't want to deal with any of that stuff. I'm going to pay somebody for that. But secondly, what I know with my modest, let's say, amount of success as an entrepreneur is that I wouldn't be where I was at today if I didn't have a coach. So in the world where I'm pretty certain technology is going to increase choice and increase possibility, I also know that if I just rely on technology to improve me as a human, here's an example. If I didn't have somebody coaching me for my physical fitness and health, what's the likelihood that when my AI-powered health coach tells me to wake up tomorrow at 6 a.m. and go for that run, and I go, you know what, I'm just not feeling like it today. And I go click and I close my laptop, or I just hit and I turn it off. There is still something about humans driving accountability with other humans. So I think that's maybe where the future is going to go. Our industry's people in our industry are talking about advisors evolving to being more of a life coach. I think that life coach word gets a bad rap, but I do think that the idea of a coach right? Somebody that's walking alongside of the person who's actually swinging the clubs and playing the game, right? I'm going to be able to make you better. How do I do that? Figuring that out. But I think that's where the future of advice is going. It's going to be less about doing your taxes or your estate plan. I mean, I was just at Future Proof, spent time with the Vanilla leadership team. They had a great presentation with Bill McNabb, the former CEO and chairman of Vanguard. The future isn't going to be me being smart and doing the technicals. That's going to be handled by, different AI agents. My value is going to be that I know to ask the right question. How? Well, because I've done it 10,000 times. How does the coach know how to tell the person how to swing the club or play the game? It's because they've watched or helped other people do it many times before them. And I think that's where the advisor of the future is going to really need to orient themselves.
Ron, this has been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much for sharing all of your experience and what you're doing with Lifeworks. And I hope that we will have you back on the show sometime soon.
Absolutely loved it. I hope every advisor listening maybe found a little nugget or a little challenge there to be future focused. So thanks for having me on. I enjoyed the conversation.
Terrific. We'll talk soon.
What is actual investing? We believe that it's a real-world task to deliver thoughtful capital deployment. It's not about speculating over the short term, it's about understanding the long-term opportunities for companies through technological progress or new business models. So we seek out those exploring big, new ideas that will change the world. Then we back them to give those ideas time to flourish. Bailey Gifford, Actual Investors. Find out more at baileygifford.com.
Thank you for listening to Advisor Confidential, the podcast series, where we dive deep into the evolving world of registered investment advisors. From compliance to client experience, digital tools to succession planning, we cover what matters most to RIAs today. Learn more by subscribing to this podcast or visiting fa-mag.com.